The enemy does not always come with horns and fire. Sometimes, he arrives through the people closest to you. They seem normal on the outside. Friends, partners, even family. But their presence brings confusion, pain, and a slow erosion of your peace. This is not random. This is not just bad luck. It is deliberate. The enemy uses human vessels to infiltrate your life, to distract you from your path, and to drain your spirit. If you're not alert, you will mistake their destruction for coincidence. In this video, you're going to learn 5 powerful signs that someone in your life may be operating under the enemy's influence right now. These are not guesses. These are patterns, clear, specific, and dangerous. Recognizing them may not only protect your peace, it could save your future. So take a breath, steady your mind, and listen closely, because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. 1. They isolate you from your support systems. This is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation because it doesn't arrive with alarms or violence. It arrives quietly, carefully, with words wrapped in concern and gestures disguised as love. At first, you feel special, chosen, as if someone finally sees you. They want to spend all their time with you. They call constantly. They say they miss you. And you believe it's affection. You believe it's closeness. But what you don't yet see is the pattern, because this attention has a cost. One by one, your relationships begin to fade. Your best friend seems more distant. Family gatherings feel tense or unnecessary. The people who used to ground you, challenge you, support you are now painted as flawed, jealous, controlling, or toxic. And the person feeding you these narratives never raises their voice. They never demand. They simply suggest. They plant ideas. They smile while they separate you from your tribe. And it works, because isolation often feels like intimacy in the beginning. The enemy uses isolation as a long-term strategy, not just to cut you off from others, but to place themselves as the single dominant voice in your life. Once they remove outside perspective, they can shape your reality. They define what's normal. They define what's acceptable. They tell you what to believe, who to trust, and what to fear. And if anyone disagrees, that person becomes the new threat. Do not underestimate how dangerous this is. The Stoics taught that our judgments shape our experience, and once your judgment is poisoned by isolation, you no longer see the world clearly. You no longer trust your instincts. You become dependent on the one person you think is protecting you. But in reality, they are preparing to control you completely. Look back on your life. Reflect. Has someone entered your world and slowly turned you against the very people who once strengthened you? Have they made you doubt the loyalty of friends who stood by you for years? Have they encouraged you to leave a church, stop attending family events, or pull away from mentors? And have they done it all under the banner of love, saying things like, "I just want to protect you," or "They don't understand what we have," or "You're better off without them"? These are not declarations of love. These are warnings. Strategic red flags wrapped in emotional manipulation. Understand, this true love does not isolate. It expands. It allows you to grow deeper roots with your community. It supports your other relationships. It pushes you towards strength. not dependency. But when someone seeks to be your only source of connection, they're not loving you, they're owning you. And spiritual ownership is the first step toward destruction. The enemy knows that a man connected to a tribe is dangerous. A man with a strong support system is hard to deceive. A man surrounded by brothers, by mentors, by truth-tellers cannot be easily manipulated. That's why the enemy sends people who divide, who question, who accuse, who subtly poison your view of everyone else. Because when you're alone, you're easier to control, easier to confuse, easier to break. The Stoic warrior does not walk alone because he is weak. He walks in unity because he is wise. He chooses solitude when necessary, but never lets that solitude become a prison. He listens to many, filters through wisdom, and trusts the still voice within. But he keeps strong voices around him to sharpen his discernment. Because no one, not even the strongest among us, is immune to deception when cut off from truth. If you feel your world has become smaller since this person entered your life, if you feel like you're living in a bubble of fear, secrecy, or constant justification, pay attention. That is not love. That is not care. That is control. You must act. Begin reconnecting with those who once gave you life. Call the friend you stopped talking to. Visit the family member you've avoided. Rebuild the bridges that were burned in silence. Step back and ask, who am I when I am not under their influence? Reclaim the parts of yourself that were buried under someone else's opinion. Reignite the relationships that remind you of your strength, your values, your truth. You were not made to walk in isolation. You were made to walk in strength, supported, sharpened, and surrounded by truth. The enemy isolates, but the man who sees clearly returns to the fold. And from that place of unity, he cannot be shaken. 2. They mirror your deepest insecurities and use them as weapons. This is not a flaw in communication. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a calculated method of psychological and spiritual warfare. These individuals are not interested in growth, healing, or connection. They are skilled observers, quietly studying you, learning where your armor is thin, where your confidence falters, and where the wounds from your past still remain unhealed. They do not attack immediately. Instead, they earn your trust. They play the role of confidant, protector, or even lover. They wait until you feel safe, until your guard is down. And then they begin to collect your insecurities like weapons in an arsenal. They encourage your vulnerability, not out of love, but out of strategy, because once they know what you fear most, they know exactly how to control you. It starts with subtle comments, slipped into moments of weakness, a quiet jab at your appearance, a passing remark about your past failures, a sudden comparison that makes you question your worth. And when you flinch, when you respond, they act surprised. They say it was just a joke, or that you're being too sensitive. But don't be fooled. These moments are rehearsed. They are engineered to reinforce one message: you are not enough. And they know precisely when to strike. Right after a victory. Right when you're gaining momentum. Right when your confidence starts to return. That's when they dig in. That's when they remind you of your old self. The version of you that doubted, that feared, that failed. because as long as they can keep you anchored to that identity, you'll never outgrow their control. The Stoics taught that a man must know himself deeply, but also guard that knowledge carefully. Your weaknesses are not meant to be hidden in shame, but neither are they meant to be handed over to someone who sees them as tools of control. You must learn to discern the difference between someone who wants to help you rise and someone who needs you to remain small in order to feel powerful. The person who uses your past against you, who weaponizes your honesty, who turns moments of vulnerability into long-term manipulation, is not a guide. They are a saboteur wearing the mask of intimacy. Ask yourself, who always seems to know exactly what to say to shut you down? Who brings up the parts of you that you're working hard to heal, not to support you but to hurt you? Who claims to know you better than anyone, and uses that knowledge to keep you under their influence? Pay attention to how you feel around them. Do you shrink? Do you second-guess yourself? Do you avoid certain topics, certain dreams, certain truths, because you know they will be used against you? That is not growth. That is not love. That is captivity. And it must end. You were not meant to be defined by your worst moments. You were not created to live in the shadow of your past. The Stoic warrior faces his flaws. He works on them with courage. He accepts what he cannot change, and he refuses to let anyone hold those flaws over his head. Because every scar, every failure, every insecurity, when acknowledged and owned, becomes a source of power. Not weakness, but when those sacred parts of you are constantly exploited by someone close, the damage runs deep. Your self-talk changes. Your energy lowers. Your sense of direction fades. That's how the enemy wins. Not by overpowering you, but by getting you to surrender to self-doubt. You start living cautiously. You start thinking smaller. You start believing the false story they keep feeding you, that you're not enough, that you'll never rise, that you're too flawed to be great. But you must reject that story with everything in you. You must see it for what it is, an illusion designed to hold you back. And the way you break free is not by arguing, it's not by proving them wrong. It's by walking away with full awareness of your worth. It's by building strength in silence. It's by reclaiming every part of you they tried to use as a chain. You are not your past. You are not your weakness. You are not their puppet. You are a man becoming stronger, sharper, and more dangerous to darkness with every step you take toward truth. So, from this moment forward, guard your soul. Protect your story. Share your vulnerability only with those who treat it as sacred. And if someone continues to throw your insecurities back in your face, you don't owe them explanation. You owe yourself freedom. Walk away. Heal in private. And return only when your presence is so rooted in self-mastery that no one can use your past to control your future. That is the path of the Stoic. That is the mark of the undefeated. 3. They drive your energy and resources. This is not about the normal give and take that exists in every healthy relationship. It's not about helping someone through a hard time or being there for a friend in need. This is about a deeper pattern, a spiritual tactic, where one person becomes a constant source of exhaustion in your life. They arrive with a need, then another, and before you know it, they've embedded themselves into your routine, your emotions, and even your finances. But what's most dangerous is not what they ask for, it's what they cost you. because every moment spent dealing with their chaos is a moment stolen from your peace. Every dollar, every hour, every ounce of emotional support you give to them is an investment that rarely returns. They are not here to build with you. They are here to feed off of you. And when your usefulness fades, they move on. Or worse, they double down. These people can sense your empathy. They can smell your kindness from a distance. And while that compassion is your strength, they see it as an opportunity. They position themselves as victims. They speak of hardship, crisis, bad luck. But the pattern never ends. One problem solved always leads to another. One need fulfilled always opens the door to something else. And over time, your life becomes a constant cycle of putting out fires that you didn't start. Your bank account feels lighter, your schedule more cluttered, your sleep more disturbed, your spirit more empty. This is not by accident. This is by design. The Stoics understood the value of preserving your inner fire. Your energy is sacred. It fuels your purpose, your wisdom, your clarity. If it's scattered across the demands of people who have no intention of respecting it, then your life becomes a shadow of what it was meant to be. This is how the enemy works. Not always through conflict or isolation, but through slow erosion, through daily depletion, through subtle theft. You begin to feel tired for no reason, discouraged without explanation, unmotivated in ways you can't articulate. That's what happens when you've allowed a spiritual leech to remain attached for too long. Ask yourself hard questions. Who consistently takes more than they give? Who drains your time, your focus, your peace, and never offers true support in return? Who always has an emergency when you're on the verge of progress? Who somehow finds a way to make their struggle your responsibility? And more importantly, who leaves you feeling weaker every time they leave the room? That is not love. That is not friendship. That is not loyalty. That is spiritual sabotage. You cannot save someone who refuses to climb. You cannot carry someone who demands more weight every time you lift them. And you cannot fulfill your own mission while being used as a battery for someone else's dysfunction. That is not compassion. That is enslavement. And it ends when you decide it ends. You must be willing to pull back, not with bitterness, but with discipline, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand your energy was not meant to be wasted. The Stoic man understands that every time he says yes to something draining, he is saying no to something sacred. His vision, his calling, his strength. He doesn't owe unlimited access to anyone who refuses to grow. He draws the line not to punish, but to protect. He guards his time. He guards his spirit. And most of all, he guards his energy like a soldier, guards a fire in the dead of winter. Because without that fire, he cannot survive the storms ahead. It's time to take inventory. Who are you pouring into that is leaving you empty? Who do you continue to help out of guilt or fear, rather than alignment with your values? Who have you allowed to take and take, while your purpose sits waiting in silence? This is your call to reclaim your power, to cut the cords that have been draining you, to stop mistaking endless giving for love. Real love replenishes. Real loyalty strengthens. Real connection builds. Anything less is a weight tied to your ankles while you try to climb. Let it go. Reclaim your focus. Rebuild your strength. And walk forward with clean energy, and clear direction. The man who protects his energy protects his future, and that future belongs to you. 4. They create constant chaos. These people are not simply difficult. They are instruments of disruption used by the enemy to dismantle your peace from the inside out. Their method is not obvious aggression. It's a slow and deliberate unraveling. They invade your life with smiles, charm, and false vulnerability. They act like they care, like they understand you better than anyone else. But behind the mask is a mission: to divide, to destabilize, and to dominate. And they do it through one tool: constant, carefully crafted chaos. This is not the chaos of life. Life brings its own challenges. This is man-made chaos, precision-engineered. It shows up when things are going well, when your relationships are peaceful, when your momentum is building. That's when they strike. Not with rage, but with whispers. Not with open attacks, but with seeds of tension. They'll say things that sound innocent, but carry venom beneath the surface. One sentence at a family dinner triggers an argument that lasts weeks. One sarcastic remark at work shifts the entire mood of the room, and they act surprised, confused, as if they have no idea what happened. But you start to see it. Every time they're around, peace evaporates. Conversations turn into confrontations. Little issues grow into major wounds. And somehow, they're always just outside the blast zone, never in the center, but always nearby. Watch for it, because chaos is not their accident. It's their fingerprint. They light the fuse and step back to watch the explosion, then offer to help you clean up the mess they caused. Why does the enemy use this tactic? Because chaos consumes your time. It drains your energy. It clouds your judgment. It lowers your defenses. And most importantly, it keeps you stuck in reaction mode. When you're constantly putting out fires, you don't have the bandwidth to plan, to grow, to focus on your deeper purpose. You're too busy recovering to build, too distracted to reflect, too anxious to hear your own wisdom. The Stoic path is about mastering yourself, not controlling others, but staying rooted while storms rage around you. But when you're entangled with someone who creates chaos by design, you're robbed of that mastery. You're pulled out of alignment. You lose control not because you're weak, but because the battlefield was chosen for you. The strategy is simple: manufacture emotional volatility, make themselves seem necessary, and position you as the unstable one. The longer this dynamic continues, the more they gain power, not through force, but through confusion. You stop trusting your instincts. You question your memories. You even start to apologize for things you didn't do. That is how deep the manipulation runs. And here's the truth that hurts the most. They often act like victims. They say, "You're overreacting." They accuse you of being too sensitive. They convince others that you're the one causing the drama. Meanwhile, they remain calm, collected, innocent in appearance. This is psychological warfare, and it's meant to exhaust you until you give up your boundaries, your peace, and your identity. But you must not surrender. The moment you see the pattern, you reclaim your power. Chaos only thrives in your presence when you allow it. Begin to pull back. Observe without responding. Speak less. React less. Protect your energy with ruthless discipline. Let your stillness become your rebellion. Let your silence become your shield. And let your discernment become your sword. Because a Stoic man does not explain himself to disorder, he walks away from it, with dignity, with clarity, and with complete command over his emotions. Remember, if someone's presence always brings confusion, tension, and emotional fatigue, they are not a neutral force. They are a weapon. Recognize it, refuse it, and return to your path. Unshaken, unmoved, and completely in control of your inner world. That is the beginning of spiritual defense. That is the mark of self-mastery. And that is how you defeat the enemy without ever raising your voice. 5. They deliberately discourage your spiritual growth. This is not always loud or obvious. It does not always come in the form of direct confrontation. In fact, it often wears the mask of curiosity, concern, or intellectual debate. These individuals position themselves as enlightened, as deep thinkers, as voices of reason. Yet every time you express something sacred, something meaningful, something rooted in your spiritual journey, they respond with mockery, with doubt, or with subtle dismissal. They question the value of your faith. They raise doubts not to understand, but to erode. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to second-guess the very foundation that once gave you strength. They plant seeds of confusion. Do you really believe that still? Isn't that a little outdated? You're too smart for that kind of thing. What they are doing is not harmless. It is not curiosity. It is sabotage. They are trying to separate you from the source of your power, because a man connected to truth, a man grounded in purpose, a man who draws strength from his spiritual roots, is not easy to manipulate. He is not easily shaken. He sees clearly, chooses wisely, and resists darkness with unwavering strength. And that is what the enemy fears most. So instead of attacking you directly, these people attack your connection to what makes you strong. They make you feel foolish for praying. They make you feel weak for needing silence. They ridicule your morals, your discipline, your values, until you begin to feel embarrassed by the very things that once brought you life. The Stoics knew that inner peace does not come from the approval of others. It comes from living in alignment with higher principles. When someone persistently mocks or dismisses those principles, they are not helping you evolve. They are trying to hollow you out. Ask yourself, do you feel lighter or heavier after spiritual conversations with this person? Do you walk away with more clarity or more doubt? Do they inspire your growth or weaken your convictions? Because real friends sharpen your wisdom. Real allies encourage your discipline. Real connection respects your beliefs, even when it doesn't share them. But when someone repeatedly attacks the parts of you that are anchored in meaning, that is not disagreement. That is disruption. And it is strategic. Because if they can disconnect you from your spiritual center, they can rewrite who you are. And once your identity is blurred, you are far easier to influence. You begin to adopt their worldview, their values, their beliefs, and eventually, you become what they need: small, unsure, dependent. You must guard your spirit as fiercely as you guard your time. Not everyone deserves access to your most sacred truths. Not everyone should hear your prayers. Some people listen only to use your beliefs against you. Keep your soul close to your chest. Share your convictions with those who honor them. And if someone consistently ridicules your growth, leave them behind, because nothing is more valuable than your connection to truth. The man who walks with spiritual clarity cannot be bought, cannot be broken, and cannot be controlled. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, and above all, stay connected to the light that first called you forward. That is your armor. That is your compass, and no one has the right to take it from you. Now that you've seen the 5 signs, the chaos creators, the isolators, the energy drainers, the faith destroyers, and the insecurity exploiters, you are no longer walking blind. You have the clarity to recognize what was once hidden, and with clarity comes responsibility. These people are not just difficult, they are dangerous to your peace, your purpose, and your growth. And the longer you tolerate their influence, the more they shape your life in ways you will one day regret. But you do not have to remain entangled. You can choose to step back, to reclaim your energy, to protect your mind, and to guard your spirit with the same intensity you would protect your very life, because that's what's truly at stake. The Stoic path demands discipline, not in words, but in action. Set boundaries that are immovable. Withdraw your presence from those who do not honor your value. Speak less. Move with precision. And let your silence become louder than any argument. You are not here to be drained, manipulated, or controlled. You are here to master yourself, to walk with calm strength, to act with focused intent, and to rise above every attack with unwavering dignity. The enemy works through people who prey on your kindness, your doubt, and your wounds. But once you see the pattern, you are no longer a target. You are a fortress, a man grounded in truth, a man who cannot be shaken. So remember, your peace is not just a feeling. It is your weapon. Guard it, defend it, and never again give it away to someone who was sent to destroy it.